Okay, so I'm going to go through the flipped lesson example. So for those of you that are new to flipped lessons or a flipped classroom, it's basically when you put a lot of the chalk and talk online so students can come into a lesson that might be more constructivist instead of something that's just a teacher going through basic information. So the issue with constructivism is you can't really assume prior knowledge. So flipping the classroom is very useful because it gives the students a chance to go through what they should know before they get into the classroom. And you can give that more of your instructional design for that can be more hands-on, going through helping students do the actual activity instead of just telling them like, oh, the parts of a narrative are this, this, that, and this. So what this lesson will be is just basically a quick lesson on narratives so that in class you can be working with students and helping them actually create a narrative, which can be more of the big idea. Okay, so what is a narrative? A narrative is a story. It can be about real events, nonfiction, or completely made up fiction. A narrative has characters, setting, problem, solution, and an ending. Let's look at an example. So, parts of a narrative. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider, who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. So yes, a very basic story, but this is a narrative. So let's look at the parts of a narrative. The setting. The setting is very important. This is where the story takes place. So in Little Miss Muffet, it takes place in a stump under a tree. The characters, the people in the story, are Little Miss Muffet, and I guess you could call the spider a stare, because it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a talking animal or just an animal of importance. The problem, something that happens in the story, well, the spider sits beside her. And then the solution and the conclusion are usually different, but in this story they're the same. So the solution is how the problem is solved, and how the conclusion is how the story finishes. So she runs away. So let's go into detail with a writing example. So narrative writing. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You could go into a lot of details here, but let's just keep it simple. Usually written in the past tense, except for block quotes, and it has characters, settings, problem, solution, and ending. And that is perfect for storyboarding. So let's look at a narrative writing example. So the topic I'm going to go through is write a story about an exciting adventure. So there we go. So the introduction or the beginning. So this is where we introduce the characters and setting. So it was a regular Saturday for Alex and Mark. They were sitting at home watching television when their Uncle John ran into the house and shouted, "Come on, boys, we are going to your grandparents' cottage in Burnaby. Make sure to bring your hiking boots. We are going on an adventure." So, characters are going to be Uncle John, Alex, and Mark. And settings are already the boys were at home, but probably the grandparents' cottage in Burnaby. So let's move on. The body of the narrative. This is the most important. This is actually where we introduce the problem. You could introduce the problem into the introduction, but I like to, especially for my ELL students, I like to split it out. Develop the plot and provide a solution to the problem. So the plot is a series of events that form the story in a narrative or a movie, etc. So Alex and Mark were zooming towards Burnaby in their uncle's car. Alex noticed their uncle was acting a bit strange. Suddenly, he swerved off the side of the road right into the forest. Alex and Mark were really worried and asked their uncle what was wrong, but he was gone. It was just Alex and Mark in the car. So, this is the problem. Alex and Mark were really worried and asked their uncle what was wrong, but he was gone. So, they swerved off the road, their uncle somehow disappeared, and it was just them in the car. Now we're going to have to develop the plot. Alex and Mark went out to look for their uncle. They found his footprints and began following them. They walked for about 10 minutes. It seemed very strange how obvious the tracks were, but they continued to follow them. Here, that's the plot. Suddenly, they came to a cabin. They noticed the road was near to it. They walked in and everyone shouted surprise. Alex had completely forgot that it was his birthday today. Mark laughed at his brother and punched his shoulder. Happy birthday, doofus. That's the solution. And then the conclusion, or the ending. This is the final paragraph of your composition. You tell the reader the story is finished. It can typically be, and they all lived happily ever after, or something more sinister. So here's the example. Alex laughed and was so happy his friends and family remembered his birthday. They all had a lovely time and went home happy. So the end. Or the end. Okay, so now you're going to get ready for tomorrow. So get ready to tell your own story of a great adventure you had. Can be fiction or nonfiction. Use the storyboard sent to you by me to plan it out so you can easily write and share tomorrow.